If you haven't noticed yet, I have a little bit of tattoos. And especially in the summer, whenever I wear shorts, people are always like, "Hey, what does that say on your leg?" Well, guess what? This video is gonna be all about my own tattoos and their specific meanings. Like when it comes to tattoos, some people, just get tattoos for the sake of art because, they like, ink on them. They don't really have much meaning. But for me, all my tattoos have really super deep meanings to it.
And it's pretty much a long story for each, so if you want to see me half naked and show off my tattoos and all their meanings, then keep on watching.
Pretty much the first tattoo that I ever got was when I was 19 years old, and it's pretty much the dagger behind my calf. And it's a tattoo that I drew up, my own custom design, and I walked into the closest tattoo shop and I was like, hey, I want this tattooed on my calf. And, in hindsight, it wasn't the most best idea and my most favorite tattoo, but it's my first tattoo and it has, the meaning as is, and I'm all about no regrets. So what it essentially is, a stencil from this guitar that my mom brought back from Vietnam when she first immigrated to Canada to give to my dad. And on top of it, there's the initials QH, which stands for Quoc and Ha, which, is the initials of my parents. And if you're Vietnamese, it's Quoc and Ha. And it's a dagger. I turned it to a dagger, and on top of it is a crown, which means that, my mom and dad sacrificed a lot, to get to where I'm at today. And they're the king and queen of my world, and they're all about, protecting me as growing up. And one day, I know how hard they'll sacrifice and how much I will have to, protect them till I die or until their very last breath. And that's my very first tattoo. The next tattoo that I actually want to show you is the one on my chest right here. Hold up. This is the only time I'm only gonna take off my shirt for this. And yes, I have pants on, so do not flag me. And that rose right there, represents my mom, and how she's super into flowers, and pretty much plain and simple, I'm a mama's boy. And she had me when she was a little bit older age, and I'm gonna lose her, but she's gonna be a part of me forever until I die. And having Asian parents and having super strict Asian moms, I grew up being scared of my mom, but the older I realized that how hard she was trying to provide, and at the end of the day she's only trying her best to show me what she knows. And I always have my mom close to my heart. My next piece of ink that I want to show you guys is, yes, on the theme of flowers, is my two roses that I have here on my elbow. Yes, on the theme of Asians as well, if you grew up in a traditional Asian household, you're expected to live with your aunts and uncles and this and that. And for me, I grew up with my grandma, and it was the point in my life where I was going through university, I was dating, and blah, 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 was so focused on school. But one of the things that really did hit me was, seeing my grandma slowly, get weaker and eventually having to be bedridden, immobilized. And I eventually saw, the last time that I saw her was, almost 2.5 years ago. And at the same time, after she passed away, that was one of the reasons why, I made a promise to myself that I was gonna do this YouTube thing. I was gonna start making videos no matter how hard or how much I cry about it, because it's something that I wanted, and I wanted to tell my story to the world. And seeing my grandma so helpless and weak, it kind of gave me another awakening, if you might say, in terms of life and how you only got one, right? And to see, death in your family, at a young age and even a younger age and all these other stuff that I've been through, it's like you might as well treat each other how, my grandma treated people, right? She was always, super kind, super warm, and super patient with, everything around her. And that's for her. And my last and final tattoo that everyone always first thing they want to ask is, hey, what does that say on your leg? And I've had people try to ask me on whether I'm on the bus or public. They're always like, and pretty much what the tattoo says, I'll put it up here on the screen, is to live is to suffer. To survive, that is to find meaning in the suffering. And call me lame and cheesy, but first I originally heard it from DMX from the song Slippin', and it was from the first intro line that he says, and I did a little bit more research, and it's from one of the philosophers that I kind of like to read upon now, is Friedrich Nietzsche. And his theory about conformity, his theories about, civilization and nonconformity. But what that quote means to me is because, growing up, I always played the victim, I always felt bad, I always felt angry because, I grew up poor. And I'm not saying, oh, look at me, I'm so poor, feel sad for me. But growing up, I was angry because, I didn't have much as all these other kids. Don't get me wrong, I'm not I don't take what my parents have worked hard for and all of that, I don't take any of that for granted. But seeing how hard they worked versus the people around me, how they haven't been through the things that I've been through. I don't want to get into nitty gritty, maybe one day. And I just felt anger towards the world because, I was like, hey, I'm a good person, or I think I'm a good person. But there's people around me that, they're doing some shady stuff, sketchy stuff, but they're born into this middle class, higher upper class, parents buy them cars and this and this. Well, on my end, my parents are suffering, they're working 365 days a week, especially on Christmas and all that. And I grew up, alone in front of the TV most of the time, and I didn't have much of a childhood. And the things that I do remember from my childhood weren't necessarily, the most memorable or the most kind of happy when it comes to that, right? And I always had this, this deep-rooted anger, and it still comes out here and there. And that was one of the reasons why I want to make this YouTube channel to, not only, portray my weird, awkward self and my weird, awkward stories, but at the same time, talk about, where I came from and my roots and how I am surviving today in a world where it felt like I was different. I was the one that stood out because it felt like I was the only one going through this and this and that. But that's what my quote says. And that is pretty much my tattoo tag and about all my stories and all the ink that I have. But I might need to update this and I might get, more. I bet you not. Super addicting. And I'll see y'all in the next one before I ramble on. Doses.